want to test this out. Jose, what would you give this film?
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of After School Cinema Club. My name is Dylan, I am the writer out of the group. I am joined by Vaughn, the actor, and the birthday boy himself, Jose, who is the director. Thank you very much for joining me, y'all. How are we doing today?
Good. Wait, is that what you said last time?
That is what I said last time? Yes.
Wow,
it's
that's a great
yeah.
intro.
What do you mean last time? This is the first time we're doing this. What do you mean last time?
In a dream I had, in an alternate, I was dream walking and saw another thing. Fantastic. I'm feeling good, and we're definitely doing this for the first time, and it's not my fault.
I am also feeling good. As an Aries this year, I would have something to say, but you know what? I won't. Thank you for celebrating my birthday. 26.
26. Damn.
Is that real?
You old hag.
26.
Ooh.
Vaughn's doing some math in his head. Anyways, to skip past all of that, we are here going to talk about a couple things. We all just saw Kung Fu Panda 4, so we're going to be talking about that and reviewing that. But before we do that, we're actually going to talk about the news of the week. First thing is going to be on the docket. We're going to be talking about Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan's newest movie. This is like their fourth or fifth project together that they have done. It is currently untitled. They just announced the release date, which is going to be March 7th, 2025. It's described as a vampire movie taking place in the early 1800s in New Orleans. So specifically in the description, it says in the Jim Crow South. Don't know anything else other than that. Don't know who's a vampire, if it's a vampire hunter. Vaughn, you immediately have a reaction. What's going on?
Well, okay, so my first thought, and I can't think of anything else, honestly. I just think about the Winklevoss twins. Every time somebody's playing, because did I read that right, that Michael B. Jordan is playing twins?
Oh, if that's in
this
there,
as
I
well?
missed it.
Let me see if I still have it. Maybe I made that up. But that always comes to mind when somebody who is not a set of twins has to play opposite themselves. And I'm always impressed because acting itself takes a lot of work, but then we have to throw in movie magic and blue screens or green screens or whatever to try to make your performance pop. I think we need to give more praise, more applause to the people who put themselves through that. I'm excited. This also reminds me of there was a series that was based off of, or a spinoff of film. The series came out, I want to say, in the last 2 years about vampires. I want to say in New Orleans. And it was what was the movie with Lestat and them?
I got nothing.
People who are listening are probably screaming at their devices right now. Brad Pitt, Tom Cruise, Kirsten Dunst, I want to say. And the trickiest thing is I've never seen this movie, which is probably another reason people might be screaming into their devices right now. We're all fired, by the way. We all need to find new jobs.
Is it Interview with the Vampire?
Interview with the Vampire. Oh my God, Jesus.
That one, yes. There's a series that happened recently where what's his name?
2.
Yeah, a guy who was Grey Worm. He's in it, I think. Grey Worm from Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's very similar backdrop, and so I'm really, I kind of and I dig that mashup of this era being South and this vibe being vampire, because when we got the same thing with True Blood, which I didn't see all of because it wasn't quite my jam, but I am interested to go back at some point. It's just the queue was long, y'all. The queue for TV shows especially is long.
Yeah. I think I missed the True Blood train like just a little bit. I think I was in like middle school, high school when that was on TV.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I was never really a vampire. Like I was never really like
same.
into that whole mythology. I don't. Did it start with Twilight? Were people like so into sucking blood, or was there always this mystique around vampires or
Dracula.
vampirism? Yeah, Dracula, Nosferatu, for sure, the OG.
Yeah, I mean, if we track like what really helped it all like pop, I think Twilight, but we go back before Twilight was True Blood, which I think really helped it blossom. Underworld as a series is kind of in
Blade.
that realm. Blade for sure from the 90s, which saved Marvel, and people will not actually recognize Blade as being the actual thing that did save Marvel. Keep it, or at least keep it afloat long enough so that Iron Man could do his big bid. Anywho, um, yeah, I think like vampires as like an alluring, like hot thing was definitely Twilight. It was like, I can save him. You can't. That's not a real thing.
Any other thoughts on the movie?
I trust these two with everything. I know we talked about it. I like a good director actor combo. This is a combo I really, really enjoy. So I'm down.
Yeah, we touched on it last time. It's going to be interesting to see what they do, especially with that concoction of setup that goes into it. 1980s, or no, 1930s South vampires. Like, okay, let's see what it is.
Yes.
I'm about it.
Horror movie, Vaughn? You're gonna watch for a horror movie?
Damn.
Yeah.
You watched Nope, right?
Nice. You heard it here first.
Did. Yeah. Nope's not even that scary. And I don't like horror movies. Moving on and staying in the kind of the realm of horror. So a timeline was revealed for the Twisted Childhood universe, also known as the Pooniverse. For those that do not
Absolutely
know,
not.
For those that do not know, Winnie the Pooh has entered the public domain. And in English, what that means is that it basically there no longer can be a trademark on it. So there's this group of movies that are being created that are attached to all of these different childhood stories that are now in the public domain. So the names of some of these movies: Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. That was the first one that came out. Then Blood and Honey 2 is going to be coming out. The third movie is going to be Bambi: The Reckoning, followed by Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare. And then Pinocchio Unstrung. I don't know if there's like a heroin or opioid problem. Don't know what that's going to be going on there. And then lastly, it is going to be it's going to be capped off with the Pooniverse Monsters Assemble, set to release sometime in 2025. I think this is absolutely ridiculous. I think it's funny, but also sounds like a disaster. But what do y'all think?
Pinocchio Unstrung is a fabulous title. Probably my favorite title out of second to Pooniverse Monsters Assemble. And with Mickey Mouse joining the fray, I'm hoping there's a Mickey Mouse cameo in all of these, if not the last one. For the audience, there is a little asterisk that comes involved with public domain works. It's not the Disney adaptations that are public domain, it's just the general story. So Winnie the Pooh existed before Disney kind of turned it into the dude who doesn't wear underwear and the red t-shirt. So Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey is about the character Winnie the Pooh. So Bambi and Peter Pan and Pinocchio is about the character. So they are banking on the fact that a lot of people don't know that distinction. But if you are still wondering, hey, that looks a lot like the Disney property, it's not Disney property, except for Mickey Mouse, which can 100% be the Disney property because that is 100 years after the original Mickey Mouse came out. So,
and it's specifically the Steamboat Willie version, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Which is like which is the one that's like in black and white for the audience. Yeah.
But Mickey Mouse nonetheless. Yeah. The Mickey Mouse.
Vaughn, what do you think about the Pooniverse?
The most upsetting part about it is, so I remember Blood and Honey the first Winnie the Pooh thing, like being a thing. What was that? 2 years ago? Maybe was that
Mhm.
even last year?
I think it was
Uh,
like super early last year. It was like, okay, now it's the 100-year mark, and like, boom, now the movie's out.
and so my biggest issue with all of this is that this Pooniverse Monsters Assemble film is slated for next year. So they're gonna churn out all of these films and just force us to like be into this franchise. And it's not like I unless y'all decide that we need to watch and cover this stuff, I have no intention to dip even a toe in this world. But this is aggressive. This is very, very aggressive. And I applaud somebody being willing to see it through. I'm not too keen on what they're making though.
I hear you. The reason, what I will challenge you on, in the sense of, oh, how are they getting these movies out so quickly? How much do you think Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey cost to make, and how much money do you think they made?
Cost to make based on the trailer I saw, uh I'll say 250,000. And then how much money they made, I don't know anybody who saw it or who
Neither
even
do I. Neither do I.
mentioned that they
Neither
were
do I.
excited to see it. So
Yeah.
I'll say they made 900,000.
I I
So,
I love
oh
this
no,
game.
go
Hold on,
for
let
it.
me get my guess in. Let me get my guess
Yeah,
in.
yeah, yeah.
I think they made it on maybe $15,000 to $20,000, and I'm confident that it made at least 5 million. It's the most profitable movie ever, mathematically speaking.
Yeah, so it had a budget of 100,000, and the box office was $5 million. It is like a true, like, it's straight out of. I actually was checking to see if it was a Blumhouse movie, because this seems like something that Jason Blum would do. For listeners that don't know, he does like Paranormal Activity, The Purge, any of those kind of horror movies. Those things are done on a shoestring budget, and he makes tons of money. So my guess is they throw a couple hundred K at each one of these, and if they're turning back, even if they're only making a couple mil, that's the horror game, So
Mhm.
Yeah.
we'll
Plus,
see.
with
I don't know if they're
Printing
going to be
money.
great movies. Yeah.
all of this hype for sure. But also the I'm thinking and I'm hoping that they do this. If they can if they can be on track to release in 2025, they have to release them all, or they have to film them all continuously to give it some sort of like Marvel-esque finale. So Blood and Honey 2 just wrapped. I think that's coming out sometime this year. If they've already started working on like Bambi, Peter Pan, and Pinocchio all at the same time, and also setting up the Pooniverse, it would be, narratively speaking, a slam dunk, in my opinion. Right? If they can add little bits and pieces of what it's to come in the future. I'm not going to watch these, unless they all agree to.
I won't be
unless.
there, but
I think for me, the only thing is like, I totally get studios wanting to jump onto like the MCU train and wanting to build shared universes. Name me another shared universe that has worked, because I can name you a ton that haven't.
Jurassic World.
That's a franchise.
well,
That's not like a
yeah.
shared. That's not like a. It's not like there's like, oh, hey, this is Jurassic World, and then this is going to be this thing, and like all these other things are kind of moving along. Where it's like, I'm talking more of like whatever like the Dark Universe was. It was supposed to be like the Mummy and like a couple other of
Mm.
those that they were supposed to do. Those things
Oh,
normally
right.
just don't really work out. DC's been a disaster. We'll see what happens now that James Gunn is like rebranding it. Even the new Harry Potter ones, even though it's not exactly like a shared universe, most of this stuff doesn't work. The MCU was unique and different. That's why it worked. And it seems like instead everyone's just trying to copy it. What are you shaking your head for?
I'll challenge
Ooh,
it by saying
ooh,
that
ooh.
the reason it failed, because I am a fan of a quote unquote shared universe. I think if it's done right, it can be that next Marvel like thing. The thing is that most of these executives are trying to make shortcuts into that success. Like the reason why Universal's MonsterVerse failed and the DCEU failed was because they expected every film to be the Avengers, in where Marvel took the time to build these movies to then eventually have the Avengers. And in even phase 2 and phase 3, there is a lot of weaknesses that start to crack because they are no longer focusing on making a good narrative for the movie. They're focusing on feeding this broader story, which is why
Yeah.
phase 4 and phase 5 has been so disjointed, because they are no longer worried about, oh, let me make a good Shang-Chi movie, or let me go make a good Daredevil show, like, or She-Hulk show. Like, no, let's make a show that feeds to this broader narrative, but that discredits the actual media that is the foundation required for this big thing. And so if they play their cards right, while it is the horror game, budget movie to make X amount of dollars on top of it, if it's done well, I'm thinking this will be gangbusters. It's gonna be great.
Oh, I don't doubt that it's not going to that it won't make a ton of money. That's yeah. I think this thing is going to kill from a money standpoint just by how much little they're going to spend. But I agree. I agree with all of your other points, except for I think Shang-Chi is a great movie. That is one of my I think that is comfortably, if not the best, one of the best post Infinity Saga Marvel movies. That's my opinion. Vaughn, you're the Marvel expert. I will let you chime in.
Here's why you're wrong, my good man. No, what I will say, I agree. Shang-Chi is great. I think I'm often calling myself the Paula, so I think there's merit in a lot of things for a lot of reasons. What I will say is something that they can do, and I'm assuming they're already in production, but given how much they have to do, there's probably still time to apply what I'm talking about here, which is the payoff. We don't need a whole lot for the payoff, and that's something I learned even in like improv classes. Like, you get a suggestion from the audience and people just want the payoff immediately, so you're like, give me a place, and they're like, the playground, and you walk, all right, and starting the scene, you're like, man, I really love hanging out with you in the playground. Immediate laugh, like, every time. You just need to like pay it off the suggestion. And I think about being the Marvel expert here, I guess. I think it was in Thor 2: The Dark World. But there's a scene where Thor and Loki are walking down the halls, and Loki is he's handcuffed, and he walks past a pillar and becomes Captain America for like 3 seconds, and then becomes himself again because he's like taunting Thor or whatever. And that is like the only real tie-in to anything else happening in the Marvel universe. And the crowd loved it. The crowd goes crazy every time. Like, oh, look, they did it. It's like the Leonardo DiCaprio meme. Like, they did the thing. I think they can really pull that off quite easily with the Pooniverse. I don't need a whole backstory on why Geppetto is hanging out with Wendy or whatever. Although, actually, I do need an explanation why that old man's hanging out with that little girl. But generally speaking, why a character from one property is in another scene or is mentioned. Like, I appreciate even though we never really see the payoff with like Spider-Man in that world, but like just Childish Gambino, aka Donald Glover, his character saying, I have a nephew in Brooklyn. That's enough of a tease to like this being a larger universe. Like, I don't need to hear you say Miles Morales, but if you like, it's a nice little nod to this. There's a larger world here.
Yeah. Pinocchio 2: Escape from Epstein's Island. I think that's the next in the franchise.
He does ride a whale to escape someone's island. So,
shout out to
Maestro.
Right there.
Well, after the Pooniverse, we're here to talk about.
I hate that
name. Yeah, it's awful. They know what they're doing.
It's a great
Dreamworks,
name. It's a great name.
In that it gets reaction, sure. I'm sorry, Dylan. Do your
You're
thing.
fine. You're fine. DreamWorks is going to make significant cuts to their staff over the next few months. The main quote being sourced from the article: many departments are being cut in half, and the creative staff on movies could be reduced to, if not more than 40 to 50%. It seems like they potentially even shelved some movies. Jose, this is something you seem to be a little bit more tuned in on. What are your takes on it?
I mean, it's just corporations being corporations, you know. A lot of the buzz online seems to be that DreamWorks is preparing for the negotiations with the Animators Guild. Um, you know, we saw a crazy impact with the screenwriters, the directors, the actors this past summer, and how that impacted the movie landscape moving forward. And so it sounds like they're taking more of a proactive approach to it, which sucks. I have a friend who's in the industry, and unfortunately, working for Warner Brothers, he has been tossed around from project to project to try to, you know, for the corporations to save a, you know, nickels and dimes over here and there. So it's frustrating for sure. It sounds like they're also trying to outsource a lot of their work to also, you know, keep their quote unquote projects in line. But if any of this sounds familiar, Disney does this with visual effects. They do have their own in-house production studios for visual effects, but they do outsource a lot of their effects. And part of the reason why a lot of the later Marvel stuff doesn't look as good is because they're not taking the time to make, you know, to stick to one production company, right?
And the
It looks like,
stories that come out of that
yeah,
are, horrific, that come out of
right,
Yeah.
those, kind of third party companies.
yeah. But Kung Fu Panda 4, which we'll get to, was able to be done before this. The Wild Robot, which looks amazing, is another one that seems to be coming out of it. They have paused a couple movies. I'm seeing here that this untitled Bollywood movie that goes by the working title of Another Me seems to be on pause or at least in the air. So whenever they strike, I hope they can get what they need, and I hope that they can rehire. It sounds like DreamWorks does wants to bring people back um, in 2025, just as soon as these negotiations boil over. But I mean, if it's anything like the summer's strike with you know, actors and writers, it's probably going to be a tough battle.
Don't
Yeah, and
fold.
I don't think it's just animators as well. I think a lot of the other kind of smaller groups are all kind of having their contracts run up, but they have, a lot, I would say, a lot less power compared to actors and writers. So it's one of those things of who knows how successful those efforts will be. I pray that they get the support and what they're asking for, but it's going to be a tough, potentially another tough year for movies.
If they're able to negotiate properly, it sounds like the actors are trying to schedule like their negotiations to line up, because I think I remember hearing about this vaguely, and Vaughn, maybe you know some more. um, they're trying to line up so every 4 years the entire industry basically shuts down, and so they all have to negotiate together to then get what they want in the industry. Does this sound anything familiar to you, Vaughn?
Yeah, I mean, a part of why everything did blow up the way it did is that the studios, according to the contracts, weren't doing anything wrong. And there were a lot of aspects and facets to it, but actors and writers, and it all started with the writers. The idea that we will pay you residuals based on how often we air this thing is something that we set up decades ago. And when it comes to streaming, and now like the internet has blown up in such a way, what does it mean for something to have aired? What does it mean for like how are we calculating residuals? And so even though the contract we've signed and the things that the unions fight for us, fight on our behalfs for, are still technically happening, the landscape has changed dramatically. So how are we adjusting for the times? And that's another facet being AI and what does it mean to have written something or to have acted in something. If I can give up my likeness for one project, what are the rights of that likeness for? Like, no, I didn't go back into the studio, but if somebody took my model, like to like figure out how to costume me using AI, which is maybe easier, if you use that same model to like have me populate a stadium in the background of another scene, how are we talking about the compensation? So I applaud them for sticking to their guns in this way and saying like, yeah, no, we need to like, because the world changes, we need to be revisiting this regularly. I think that's one of the bigger wins from all the negotiations last year.
Yeah, I think some of the AI animation stuff too to me is really wonky. I don't know if y'all have seen like all this stuff on like Twitter with Sora, which does the like, hey, you can create like a movie in seconds or a 30-second movie with no audio. I think all of it honestly looks low key kind of trash. Like the video that always kind of comes along of like the alien like the alien walking around in New York City that like looks and is blending in 35 millimeter film, and it's just like he's not blending in. He's very fucking clearly an alien, and he's like, it also doesn't look like it's shot on film.
This is animated. Like, y'all see that?
Yeah, so I'm all for these people getting what they deserve.
That AI animation is big. AI in general it's a different conversation for the after school science club or something, but yeah, just thinking about like a year ago, Will Smith eating spaghetti, that was also a big one on Twitter, and how like horrible and kind of laughable it was. And then you type that same prompt in now, and it's almost believable. Almost, there are a bit of AI artifacting that eventually will figure itself out, but it's good for them to start fighting now. To your point, Vaughn, to then protect themselves in the future. um, Unions work, bullying works. You guys were able to negotiate something great for yourselves, and we'll, you know our thoughts go out with the animators for sure.
Moving on, one of the last pieces of news that we're going to talk about is a animated Cat in the Hat has been announced. It's going to be coming out in March 2026, so 2 years from now. Bill Hader will be voicing the titular Cat in the Hat, and then Quinta Brunson and then Bowen Yang from SNL are also expected to be joining. I've seen bits and pieces of the OG Cat in the Hat. It is a redonkulous movie. If you have never seen it, it is absolutely unhinged. I'm cautiously optimistic for whatever this is. What do y'all think?
Hey, you missed Xochitl Gomez. What's with this Hispanic erasure going on?
Oh gosh,
I noticed it too, and I thought it was Marvel erasure. So we're this is the pincer.
I didn't know
move.
that she was. When I
You could have
looked her up
pronounced
and
her
I
name.
didn't.
It's okay.
It's not that. I went to school with the Xochitl, so that wasn't to me an issue. You couldn't pronounce Mamadou yesterday or last week, so I don't want to hear it. But
Wow. No, make your point, please.
I looked her up and I didn't recognize anything. So I was just like, how sometimes like they put like, it's one of those things of like, those are three big names. Everyone knows who those three names are. And I figured, I was like, and then there's this other person. And that to me, it just wasn't as exciting. Sometimes when you start to list the names of people, it can get like, and then this person. So my mistake for her,
pivotal character in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness,
right?
But
Like
somebody, whatever.
I never saw it. This isn't like a, hey, I didn't like, I don't know, man. I marveled out. It didn't look interesting.
This was before the Marvel out though. What?
I mean, it was before like, I'm like completely out, but just when I watched the trailers, I was like, this movie doesn't look that great.
Yeah, Dylan was barely Marvel in.
That's not true though. Like
okay.
That's a thing that gets like thrown on me. During the peak of the Infinity Saga, I was all in. Like when Infinity War came out, I was still living in Connecticut at the time, and I flew to DC just to watch it with my like friends who had moved to DC. Like I was all in at the time, and I just don't think the movies are as good anymore. Maybe just my like thoughts on movies have changed. Could be a little bit of both, but I do feel like the quality has gone down, and I just didn't find it interesting.
I want to
I
forgive
don't.
you.
I will. I saw it because it was supposed to be a Sam Raimi horror movie, and then it wasn't. So I was disappointed. But at least I knew that Sochi was in it.
I apologize. This is
I don't
payback
want
for the
to.
Remy Malik erasure from the other episode too.
I I'm assuming Illumination's making this. I'm not a fan of their animation series, but Universal owns a lot of those Dr. Seuss properties. They did the Lorax, they did the Grinch. So it'll probably be another kids movie. Bill Hader, though, as the Cat in the Hat, I can definitely see. I think Mike Myers plays a great Cat in the Hat from that OG movie. So I'm excited to see what it's about. Again, I'm not a fan of Illumination's animation style, um, but if the trailer looks interesting, then maybe this will be the only other Illumination movie that I've seen besides this Mario movie.
What don't you like about their style? Because I remember you mentioning that with the Mario Brothers movie, and as someone, I am ignorant to a lot of the art of animation. So to me, it's just like, oh, it's animated. So what what is it about their style that you're not a fan of?
I think it's their over reliance on slapstick. They're just a lot of their, I guess, just I don't know. It's hard to put my name, my pin on it. It's just something about maybe it's the Minions. I don't know. I don't like the Minions.
I don't like the Minions. I don't like the Minions. Minions is super slapstick. So I
Yeah.
no pushback from me.
But even like Despicable Me 1 was a pretty solid movie. I think we can, if people can look back and say that was a pretty good animated movie. But then I think that they chose to focus on the wrong things that made it right. I mean, there's a Despicable Me 4 coming out. Like, I did not know that there needed to be a fourth one. I didn't need to know that Gru fucks, canonically. Dude,
More importantly,
more importantly, right? Like, I don't want to think about that. But just even with like Migration, which was the previous Illumination movie, a lot of like the gags just seem to be a bit too like over the top for me for what animation could be. I know that animation is a forum for a lot of that sort of storytelling and a lot of that like relief when it comes to like comedy or animation, but just the way that they choose specifically to present themselves has just never really been a fan for me.
I get you.
Yeah, that's
Vaughn,
fair.
Vaughn, what do you think?
Um, I'm excited, especially with this cast coming up. I think Bill Hader, and I think about it like a lot of his SNL stuff. This is like if you I'm like if you take Stefan, which is like a recurring character from like Weekend Update, and you just do the most ridiculous Stefan bits and do that for 90 minutes, yeah, I'm in. I'm down. I'm curious to see how everybody else kind of folds or falls into the story of it, but I'm I'm optimistic. I missed initially that it was animated, and so this somehow it being animated made it all settle better for me because initially I was like, wait, who's gonna play? Wait, Bill Hader's gonna wait. What is? How are we pulling these people together? But if it's
Yeah.
animated, then it's quite easy to do, actually.
I want to know who these actors are going to play, because I mean it's like the story of the Cat in the Hat, right? It's like a brother and a sister, so that's two, and then the Cat in the Hat, and then Thing One and Thing Two, that's five, but we only have four confirmed casts. So is somebody going to do both Thing One and Thing Two, and then also who is going to be Thing One and Thing Two? Sochil will probably be the girl. Bill Hader's the Cat in the Hat. So is Quinta gonna be the Thing One and Thing Two then? I just answered my own question. There's my fan cast.
Unless Thing One and Thing Two are like gendered differently, in which case I could see Quinta and Bowen being Thing One and Thing Two, and then maybe we have a new name or a even lesser name than Sochi be the brother. I don't know, but I'm leaning in. I'm curious, and I'll likely see it.
I'll probably
Did
see
you
it.
watch The
Yeah.
Grinch?
I did watch The Grinch. Grinch was very funny. And now that I think about it, they're kind of dipping in the same bag because who did he play? He had like a smaller role, but Keenan Thompson was in The Grinch, and
Oh,
it was very funny.
I
And
didn't know that.
that production was wild because Tyler the Creator did
Oh
did
yeah,
a
he did the
remix
soundtrack.
of the you're a mean one, Mr. Grinch, and I think he might have did the whole soundtrack.
Oh wow,
It's
Yeah.
like,
I didn't know that. Okay.
okay, this is a wild ride. Let's do it.
Hmm. Well, if Universal, who owns Illumination, owns SNL, right, then that makes sense. So they could pull their
Same
talent
family. That
from
makes
there.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alrighty, and the last bit of film news to talk about, something that I'm actually incredibly excited about. Kojima Productions, which is the basically video game studio of Hideo Kojima, who, if anyone does not know, he is kind of the only mainstream video game developer. He's comfortably, I would say, the most popular. He is mostly known for creating the Metal Gear Solid franchise, if anyone knows what that is. He has since left that gig to basically form
Snake!
his own company.
Snake! Snake!
um, and has made a game called Death Stranding that came out, I think, like 6 or 7 years ago. And A24 and him have partnered for film adaptations. And in the release, it says adaptations. So I'm curious if it's either going to be future games or if maybe Death Stranding is going to be multiple movies. But basically, Death Stranding is a somewhat of a post-apocalyptic game. And basically, the way that they describe it here, because it's going to be better than what we can do, it blurs the lines between life and death and brings forth nightmarish creatures into a world on the brink of collapse. The trailers featured like these like weird babies in jars. It's a super bizarre story. But I'm all here for it. He loves film. I would love for him to have a heavy hand in the production of the game as well. Video game adaptations normally are not pretty good, but here's hoping we can maybe get one that is, that isn't, or that is good, I should say.
Dare I say, video games are experiencing a renaissance. Video game movies are coming back. Sonic 2, Mario Bros. These are all great movies based
Animated,
on video
yeah,
games. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
okay.
We've yet to really see too many great live action. I think Borderlands looks okay from the trailer. Borderlands looks solid.
Yeah, I have opinions on Borderlands.
I never played the game, yeah, so I don't know. Apparently, it's not very faithful, but never played the game.
But just going back to Kojima, yeah, he's a huge cinephile. I love his one sentence reactions on Twitter whenever he watches a movie, and just seeing the stark difference between when he actually enjoys a piece of film. Um, we'll put it on the stretch goal to get Kojima on the pod. But yeah, I think it was last year's Game Awards where he brought Jordan Peele out for their new game on the Xbox platform. And I think Jordan Peele was a guy who grew up playing video games who turned into a director, and Kojima was a guy watching movies who turned out to be a video game director. And so both of their love for the other medium has really influenced their um, current productions. Death Stranding being a very cinematic game, and that new title coming on Xbox that seems also to be a very very cinematic game. I'm excited to see what that's about. Haven't really played Death Stranding though. I'm gonna put that out there. Never
None of us
really.
have.
Well, I know it was a divisive topic, and maybe we'll save it for the after school video game club. Um,
The After
but
School
I mean,
Pod Network.
Kojima was always meant to, or what is always in the conversation for one of the greatest, video game producers of all time, and so I'm excited to see what he gets to do with, a production company like A24.
Yeah. I mean, growing up for me, it stood out to me that like if you're, I never played Metal Gear Solid, but I would watch friends play Metal Gear Solid, and there could be a stretch of like 3-5 minute cutscenes, and that the idea that I thought I was going to be having a siloed video game experience, and like that I have this like storytelling, like movie like experience within the game. I like that blurring that line that was the first time that I really noticed that. And so I was like, okay, this is different. I'm used to, especially coming from a world of like mostly platformers, that really struck me. And so knowing that this is coming and now we're like flipping it, and it's like, well, I'm gonna really just lean in on the narrative here. I'm excited, and maybe it'll get me to play Death Stranding. And I think of like Last of Us, and I like went back to replay some of that as well before it
The
came
Last
out.
of Us, hey, Last of Us show was great. Speaking of video game adaptations,
I liked it.
that's it.
I had issues with the last episode. I was very frustrated with the last episode. It felt like they rushed, in my opinion, what was one of the more pivotal parts of the game, and it just kind of turned into a montage. It was good. I'm not against it. That's actually probably the best video game adaptation.
Can I? Okay.
Oh,
Just real quick, why? What happened? What did you not like about it?
Spoilers for both the Last of Us show and video game. Skip ahead a couple minutes. I'll put it in the show notes. I just like in the game when you go to rescue Ellie, that is so difficult. And I remember that's the part of the game that I remember the most is like that, like you going through and like going like doing all that. And I guess the argument is like, oh, you just can't show him mowing down all of these people. You still did. You just did it in this weird montage thing. And I'm not a big montage guy for the most part, as a way to shoot things. And it just felt like they either ran out of time or ran out of money. And that's just what they chose to do. And I don't know. To me, it fell a little flat. Everything else was really good though.
Okay. My only challenge there is like, or just question is how do we showcase that inner battle that Joel has? Like we're in the driver's seat playing the game, doing it, so we get that catharsis. But how
like
can you show that?
were you expecting like a oneer, just like a long
I would
corridor
have
with like
loved
people to
a
show
oneer.
up?
Would have
But
loved a oneer.
they would have run out of money. That would have been expensive.
God, Sony and HBO, they're just pinching pennies together to get this thing made.
Yeah, listen, they're working class
Sony,
people.
HBO, and Warner Brothers. By the way, yeah, sorry, those three.
Hey, Warner Brothers
Titans.
is going through some tough times. You know, they had to
Yeah.
cancel 2 whole movies. Like, if you can't deliver, something's going on. The buck stops with David Zaslav. Get him out of there.
Yeah, no, that's my thoughts on Last of Us, the show. I love Pedro Pascal. No hate towards him.
And I feel like this ball's just gonna keep on rolling because it sounds like we're ready to talk about Kung Fu Panda 4.
Yes. So all of us
Dylan.
have seen Kung Fu Panda 4. One of us has only ever seen KungFu Panda 4 and none of the other movies in this series.
I was gonna say, how would you rank it out of the 4?
Oh, it is the best Kung Fu Panda movie that I have ever seen. If it's the best Kung Fu Panda movie that's ever been out, I feel bad. I have some thoughts on the movie. I feel bad because I did tell my 2 friends and co-hosts that I was going to see all of the Kung Fu Panda movies before we saw the movie. Then we had to move up the recording by a couple days, which kind of threw a wrench. And so I was not able to see 3 movies in a span of about 2 or 3 days. So I watched a series of 4-minute YouTube videos that described the movies, which were really helpful. And for me, gave me a lot of insight as to what happened in these 3 movies. So I went into Kung Fu Panda 4 understanding the lore and knowing what was going on. And for me, I thought it was very helpful. I at no point felt lost. Vaughn has now left the call. I'm going to assume that that's an internet issue, and that is not.
He's furious. He's furious. Vaughn left.
I don't think that's him going on strike. I'm going to assume that is an internet issue. yeah, that's where I'm at.
I mean, it was up there with one of the better Kung Fu Panda movies. I think the second one is probably my favorite. I just like the climax with the peacock. Um, I apologize. I feel like I set you up for something that didn't. Just like we set up Vaughn the other day for Levelized Bleeding. Um, DreamWorks in the past has had a great track record with really pushing the animation. I guess norm in the West. It all started with the Bad Guys, a great animated film. They took a lot of inspiration from like anime and kind of you know non-westernized animation to make that movie. Um, and then they did the same with Puss in Boots. Puss in
Yeah,
Boots was also animated fantastically. Um, and so I had a feeling that Kung Fu Panda was going to be another one of those. Okay, this is the next step in animation for DreamWorks. Let's go ahead and see what that's about. But it was more of a generic DreamWorks film. While there were bits and pieces that were stylized, um, I wish there was more. Vaughn, I you missed it, but I apologized. I feel like we set us up for something. I just went through some examples of previous DreamWorks movies where the animation was fantastic, and Kung Fu Panda, in my opinion, kind of underdelivered. But maybe that was my own sort of perception as to what it
I
was or what it
agree
was
with
supposed to be.
everything.
Wow. Um. Yeah. We're just doing general thoughts so far still, yeah, right?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's just non spoilers at the start.
Great. Um I appreciate the messaging in the film, and I feel like when it comes to animation, because of where people tend to think animation belongs, I'm like, what are we
Dylan.
saying here? um and it anytime you're like it's the fourth go round for anything, I'm really looking for what's going to be new and unique, and I feel like we didn't get a whole lot of it. That being said, and I've said it before, and I'll probably say it until my last breath. I try to look at what is your world, what is the thing you're supposed to be doing, and how well did you do it? And for what many would call like a kids movie with some kung fu in it, I thought they did. If I had to grade it, um, I'd say probably a B, maybe B plus, even if they can like do a makeup essay and tell me why certain things were a certain way. I could bump that up to actually I'll say solid B. I could bump it up to a B plus if I got a follow up essay on why they made some certain decisions. Um, which one of them is a bit of a spoiler, so I'll get to that part later. But yeah, I do appreciate the story, the casting. I thought was smart. I really enjoyed. I guess Viola Davis is just kind of like in her bag right now as a straight up villain. So I think about this film. She was in the Hunger Games prequel last year. And it's also funny because we were talking with this upcoming in the news in a previous episode. We talked about the upcoming Beatles projects and maybe casting Aquafina strategically to see how that would play. I think with that same sentiment, Aquafina was brilliantly cast here as like
Absolutely.
she's good at sounding like somebody you don't trust. But yeah, overall, I felt like the message was maybe a little too simple. Um, but overall, I had a good time.
Yeah, I liked the voice acting. I thought the voice acting was really good. I thought Ian McShane was really good. Like
Oh,
Viola
you
Davis
have
is
to
always going to be
watch.
good.
Okay.
I'll maybe watch the first one since he's in the first
Dude, the
one
first
mostly.
one's great. The first one's great.
The first one's my second
I'll
favorite Kung Fu Panda.
is the second one your
What's your
favorite?
favorite?
If I okay, I'll rank them super quick. Kung Fu Panda 2, my favorite. Kung Fu Panda 1, and then 3, then 4.
I'd probably switch 3 and 4. Kung Fu Panda 2 is just amazing. Kung Fu Panda the OG one is a close second. and then 3 and 4, I'm like, Dylan,
Yeah,
rankings.
Kung Fu Panda 4. That's where I'm at. Yeah, I loved James. I love James Hong, so I thought he was really good as well. Like there were some lines that got laughs out of me, but I guess it is comforting to also hear that this is one of the weaker movies in the series, because you have spoken really highly of it. And so I went in with a little bit of raised expectations, and I think I was let down a little bit. I was like, dang, this really isn't like all that great. There was a couple animation shots that I thought were really cool. Other than that, I don't think there was like too much that was that special animation wise. There were a couple times that I giggled, but it really wasn't even that funny. But the other thing I just want to highlight is I'm very sure that I am now on some governmental list. I went into this movie. I bought the ticket for it, and it was an empty theater when I bought the ticket. It was for a 10:45 a.m. showing on a Wednesday morning at the Americana, and then I walked in, and there was like 4 families of very young children, all strategically had bought tickets all around me. And so I was just like in the middle of this, and it felt so weird. And there was like a kid behind me that he kicked my seat the entire movie. And it wasn't really like, it was just like a thing. And I was just, shout out to his parents for nothing, not doing a thing about it. And then there was like kids
He's expressing
in front of me.
himself.
There was kids in front of me that were probably like a little too young to be there, and this dad was struggling. One of them was like running, like would run out of the theater, and the dad like wouldn't notice immediately, and then would like freak out and then go and chase after the kid, and then like leave a kid that was like too young to be alone also at just there. And then there was just like another family that was like really well behaved, but it was just like a wild theater experience, and I've never really like been in a situation like that. And this was the after school parent corner. But it was just a surreal movie-going experience. And I'm sure with the billions of dollars that the LAPD gets, I am now on some, pre-crime list. Yes, that's where I'm at.
So what is so interesting, though, as you talk about the audience when you saw it, I, too, saw the movie midday on a Wednesday. I was in Burbank, if that makes a huge difference. But there were... as I think about it, there were, I think, also 5 groups or, 5 parties. I was by myself. There was a couple that was in my same row that was probably in their 40s or 50s, maybe 60s even. Behind
Wow.
me, next row back, there was a pair of guys, both in probably their 20s or 30s. There was another couple, probably in their 30s. And there was a mom and her daughter all the way in the back. And I was totally prepared to like also be worried about being on somebody's watch list. And we were mostly adults in the theater.
Dang. Alrighty. What about you, Jose?
The only list you're on is the list of satisfied customers who enjoyed a wonderful piece of media. No, I saw it on a Monday evening, a 7:30 p.m. showing of Kung Fu Panda, and him and I were the only 2 people in the theater.
Dang.
When we bought our tickets, there was one person in like the front row, not the front row, but like the first row of like as it starts to loop up,
Mm-hmm.
next to the escalators or the stairs, so front right. And then there was another person allegedly in the back left. And so my first thought was, these guys are pirating the movie 100%. There's no way that these 2 people are sitting in complete polar opposites of each other to watch this movie on Monday. So we just sat in the middle and just like enjoyed it, pretty much a private screening of it. We did go see it at a relatively underfunded movie theater. For anyone who lives in SF, we went to the Town of Fran shopping center, which is a mall that is unfortunately going to die soon. I think some biotech company bought it, and so I'm not surprised that nobody is going to that movie theater, because even the workers were surprised to see us. Like they tapered off the entrance, and there was only a guy standing at the desk like on his phone, and like as soon as we walked in, they were like, "Oh, we have people here." and like we
How do I
scanned
do my
in and
job?
we walked to buy our
Damn,
concessions, and even the people there were
man.
like, "Oh shit, there's people here," and then like put their conversations away as they tried to make us buy something. But
Wow.
That's so sad.
it's sad for sure, and that's something we both kind of like walked away thinking too. But movie for movie's sake, it was a good time. I'll add us to the list of satisfied customers for sure.
I was a customer. Um,
Whoa.
This,
And this
was
is
your favorite movie.
and also my
I was
least
gonna-
favorite.
that's what makes this so tricky, because now I feel like it's a harder sell to tell you to watch at least the first two for sure.
Watch the first two, 100%.
But they are good. They are
I'm-
very good.
I'm a Jack Black believer. I watched School of Rock last night. Not the Kung Fu Panda movies. I like Jumanji. So I am all in on not last night. I liked him and The Rock's Jumanji. That was a good movie.
Was it?
You didn't like it? Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Wait, you didn't like Jumanji?
I didn't like Jumanji. Nuh-uh. It was another rock movie, a generic rock movie with
Whoa.
Kevin Hart and Jack Black.
What?
I think this is. I think
Maybe-
I
maybe
think
the
this
original
is
is
just
nostalgia.
Fast and Furious stuff. That's just like
No,
is
no, 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 no,
clouding.
no, 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 no.
Oh, good pull, Dylan. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right. And no matter what
Yeah.
you say, Jose, he's right. But go ahead. I'll let you cook. Go ahead.
Maybe. I don't think The Rock. I don't think The Rock has tried to take himself too seriously. I think a lot of it. There was a meme a while ago that was like, "Can you name what movie this is?" And it was like 3 different stills of The Rock smoldering in like a T-shirt, and
Yeah.
it's like, oh, they're the same movie.
An earth-colored button-up.
Yeah,
And he's like running.
right.
Yeah.
It's just a generic movie, and like, yeah, maybe Jungle Cruise was cool, and Rampage was fun to see, CGI people fight or CGI monkeys fight, but The Rock as an actor isn't really my favorite. And you're right, maybe it is Fast and Furious drama being thrown into there, but for
Well, I don't know
action
anyone
star,
that's
for
like-
action's sake, it's like,
I don't know anyone that's like, oh, The Rock is an unbelievable actor. Although that being said, that he is doing a movie with one of the Safdie brothers, an A24 movie, where he's going to be playing like a drug addict MMA fighter in like a serious role, and like that I'm excited for. Just like if there is a role for The Rock to be very good in, that's literally perfect. He has been in combat sports. He has probably worked with, knowing the WWE's history, plenty of drugged out, addicted wrestlers, and can probably tap into that a lot. So that's actually something I'm a little interested in. But other than that, there aren't a lot of The Rock movies that I care about. And I think in terms of like wrestlers turned actors, even though he was the best on the mic in WWE, like I think he's behind John Cena. I think John Cena is much better as like a comedic actor. And funny enough, Dave Bautista, who's really was not good on the mic at all in WWE, to me is a much better actor than the two of them. He's in like Denis Villeneuve movies and like other actual movies having important roles, which is just kind of weird because I feel like it would have been the opposite way if you had told me as a kid, hey, these 3 are going to be actors.
Yeah. That tracks.
yeah.
He
could be a good action movie star. I think maybe give me one of like the John Wick guys to direct like one of those action style movies, and I will be sold. Because yeah, to your point, like if he's going from wrestling to acting, and he's not really aging out of the wrestling side of how he was famous, then just lean into it even harder. So I mean, is he gonna give a convincing performance to being a drug addict? In my opinion, probably not. There's a certain level of craft that goes into tapping into something like that. Will he be great kicking people's asses? And I hope they don't cut a bunch of it and be just a bunch of jump cut action movie BS. Then yeah, I'll be on board. Maybe it'll change my mind.
Yeah, I think it's fair about the like more on the drug addict side of things. Yeah. If you don't like The
Yeah.
Rock too, I'd watch WrestleMania in 2 weeks, because I think he's probably going to lose, and he's going to be the bad guy, and I think you might like that.
I've been keeping tabs on it. There's a guy
Yeah.
on Instagram who like pretty much recaps all of the wrestling events leading up to so far. So I'm like sort of in the loop with what's going on, and I'm excited. I mean, my time at AEW was great, and I've been
Hell
like
yeah.
so slowly starting to get into what wrestling is as a sport or as a form of entertainment. Um, but yeah, if I can watch WrestleMania, it's on Peacock, right?
Yeah, it'll be on Peacock.
It'll
Yeah.
be on Peacock. Yeah, I'll watch it for sure.
Yeah,
Interesting.
Vaughn liked AEW too.
I did. It was a nice. It was a welcome home. Felt good. And speaking of liking AEW and liking some good fight and action, that is my biggest gripe with Kung Fu Panda 4.
Forgot we were talking about Kung Fu Panda.
Remember that movie we said we were going to talk about? I'm here to remind you. Yeah, I wanted a lot more than what we got. And I think I also feel like Chameleon was underutilized. Viola Davis's
Super
character being
underutilized.
the villain here, and like, okay, it's interesting to say we have a shape shifting villain that can also legitimately wield the power of whoever she shapeshifts into. That was that was like my I think they could have made that a little bit more dramatically interesting. Like she can look like the person, but she doesn't have the power of the person, which is why she's after Poe and the Dragon Warrior and all the other, people, all the other like kung fu masters. But in that first scene when we see Tai Lung, which he's even more terrifying in the first movie, Dylan, I need you to go back and rewatch it. I cannot stress that enough. To see Tai Lung again, I was like, okay, is this just a bluff? And then we won't actually see this Tai Lung do anything interesting. So that's going to be like the tell. I was waiting for a more clever way to like identify who's real and who's not. Like how does Chameleon mask herself? But yeah, and a part of it may also be that in my screening, the projector cut out midway through the final fight scene,
Oh man.
Oh,
and it took us 10 minutes to get back. Like we had to tell one of the workers, like, oh, we were at the final fight, and then they came and checking in on us, and the movie was like paused at a certain moment. We're like, no, past this. And like there was like dialogue, and we like found the moment, and then like we were able to play. So that maybe like I think broke up some of the flow. But yeah, I wanted more fighting.
It felt like the Chameleon got introduced super late. Like so much of the movie, I felt like was spent on the friendship between um, Aquafina and Jack Black, which I also get because I did not see that twist coming personally. So I was like, I got with that. Um, so I guess like that's part of the reason why. But it was just like, yeah, they introduced the Chameleon super late, and it just felt it felt like the end of, spoilers for the worst Star Wars movie, for the end of Rise of Skywalker, when there's like a million fucking Star Destroyers just come out of like the sky, and it's just like, and then they all lose really quickly. It's like she has the power of like a millennia of kung fu warriors, but like loses to a fox in a regular ass fight. And I get the messaging behind it, but it just like the little bit where like she was fighting as all of the other like villains from the other movies, like that was cool. But yeah, it was like 30 seconds. It would have been cool if they had, even as someone that hasn't seen the movies, if they had leaned in on like the peacock and how that like messed with him, if there was like some way she was able to manipulate that to like a higher degree and like draw on his trauma from his childhood. I know what's going on in these movies, even though I didn't see them. Like that was something that I would have been kind of drawn in on, and it didn't really happen.
yeah. I I thought Tai Lung actually came back in that opening scene. I was like, no way, like this guy actually is around. He's going to be involved in one way or another. But then in like that close up where his eyes are like orange, you can tell that it's like scaly. And I'm like, okay, then that's clearly the villain, the chameleon. So then maybe there will be more of these scenes where people come from like all over the Hidden Leaf Village or the Valley of Peace. Um, and they're like, "Oh, we just saw the peacock. Oh, we just saw Tai Long. Like, oh, we just saw this guy. Like, come help us." And leading into something grander than that. I hated that they, in the final fight, jumping all the way up to the end, they have like one or two punches with the abilities of the other villains, and then just become this amalgam kind of like ugly, you know, like monster. Like, what's the point? Was the point to become a monster to begin with, or to actually use these people? I guess it's maybe more of like there's so much power that it can't be contained in this vessel, the chameleon, that it has to be expressed into this supernatural kind of way. But Kung Fu Panda has never really been that sort of like storytelling journey. It's never been so fantastical that you get a monster. It's been somewhat rooted in the reality, or at least in the reality that is the movies. um that being said, the last fight with Poe, like Scaly Poe versus normal Poe, I think that was pretty cool. Because again, it leads to that harnessing the power of the person that she absorbed. And so the fact that she is Poe fighting like an evil Poe, and even like the animation does like the split, like half down the middle, like, yeah, half good, half
Hmm.
bad. That was pretty cool and pretty fun to watch. But um, not a fan of Aquafina. I hope she's not the setup for the next Kung Fu Panda or Kung Fu
It felt
Fox or whatever. I
it
hope
felt like
not.
we're gonna
I
get Kung Fu
hope.
Fox.
I didn't get that same vibe. I think we're
Yeah.
okay. I hope we're
You
okay.
think we're if it goes like if there's like an animated show, because I think there was like a Nickelodeon animated Kung Fu Panda show. If it's like
There
an
was, yeah.
animated, like if there's like an animated Aquafina show, cool. Keep it to streaming or keep it to television. But for the mainline Kung Fu Pandas, I mean, the movie is called Kung Fu Panda. You're not gonna give me a Kung Fu Panda colon Fox, you know.
Fast and Furious presents Hobbs and Shaw.
Kung Fu Panda presents Aquafina. Yeah.
The other thing that I was kind of frustrated at too is none of the Furious Five being in the movie until the very end
Yep.
in the credits. And to me, that just felt like a money thing. It felt like they didn't
Hmm.
want to pay those actors and they didn't want to pay to animate at all. So I wasn't a fan of that either.
I
In
mean,
my research, I saw that Seth Rogen had to have gotten paid a little bit because he did Scream as Mantis for like one moment. But that's
oh,
There
it.
you go.
I feel like they haven't been that present in general, though, right? Were they in? They were a big part of the first one, and then I don't really remember them in the second or third one. So they were
Well,
They are
already
in
kind of.
both.
in the
They're in
second one, because
both.
they have an issue
Huh.
with they don't trust him after he gets scared with the peacock.
Oh, right. But what was their role in the third one?
I don't
It was
remember.
a lot smaller, but they were still there with him because what the way they kind of worked around it, and I don't know how those contracts necessarily go. If it's a flat, here's my fee, or if you're going to include me for X amount of time or X amount of lines, here's my fee. But in the third one with the Yak guy, J.K. Kai, I want to say General Kai, who had the big bladed things,
Mm.
the jade weapons. He jaded them pretty, like he
Mm.
captured them pretty early on, and once you're captured, you're like a
Yeah.
jade zombie kind of sort of,
Hmm.
so you have no lines. So that's kind of how they worked around it there. But yeah, I was already upset to like hear, in the very beginning they're like, oh yeah, they're out doing their own thing. It's like a
It's like,
hand wave,
yeah,
just for them to spit in our faces and bring them back for a montage training sequence at the very end of the movie.
with no dialogue.
But you get Jack Black singing "Hit Me, Baby, One More Time."
Yeah.
Which,
That was great.
yes, always Jack Black sing all the things, always, forever. Yes, but don't tell me these people are busy and then literally shoehorn them in at the very end. Just like, I don't know. I didn't like it at all. Um, yeah, and I feel like they could have. been really helpful in the same they could have been a helpful tool for Poe to like learn to accept or trust Jen, Aquafina's character. Like they were the Fab Five or the Furious Five or whatever,
The
and
Jackson Five.
the Fab and the Furious Jacksons, five of them, and they did not like Poe when he joined their group, and so they had to like learn to accept him. And I think that there was an opportunity there from a storytelling standpoint about like including a new person who does not necessarily look or behave in the way you think they should to accept them. And maybe that's like rehashing the story you told in the first one about an unconventional hero, or giving somebody the benefit of the doubt. But it just seems like there could have at least been a conversation between Tigress and Poe about their relationship or like their opinions on Jen joining them. And yeah, I think, keep Jen as this like trickster fox character. We don't know what she's up to, and then she betrays us still, but then we learn to forgive, whatever. But we lose a lot of that by not having the original five warriors in the like throughout the film.
I would say that Poe does a good job in, well, just if we're talking about why or what animation, or what quote unquote kids movies have to be like sending a message. He was a pretty positive guy, and that was his whole shtick throughout the whole movie, right? It was that he is this trusting character who is inviting and warm and welcoming to everybody. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter your preconceptions. The fact that she was a
Is an
sly
easy mark.
fox, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think the fact that she was a fox is a bit too on the nose. I feel like we went over this with Zootopia, where it's like, oh, don't trust anybody that you see, right? Just because they're a
Swiper,
fox
no
doesn't mean
swiping.
they're an asshole. Swipe or no swiping. Like just okay, like couldn't have been like a bunny? I don't know, something else, right? Um, but not necessarily. I don't. I also don't necessarily think that it would be in his character, Poe's character, to not trust somebody. At least from the vibe of this movie, because he's even when they're in the villainous layer with all of the other quote unquote riffraff, like the unwanted, he's still like friendly and vibing. And when they're in the bar, like the restaurant on the cliff, like he's pretty inviting and he's pretty
Yeah.
almost aloof to what's going on.
Like, yes, to all of it, but I don't I needed more tension. And
Hmm.
that maybe that's what it is that like
Yeah,
Poe can be all of that, but I need more than who was it, like Master Shifu, who was like just kind of like, I don't know, this is a fox. I needed a stronger push or like a stronger resistance so that Poe having trusted her, like I need Poe to have like doubled down on trusting her at some point. And outside of him like getting her out of jail when he caught her the first time, we don't really get that.
he gave her the staff.
Yeah, but
Which
It
I feel like is not like a gift per se. Like if it's just like, oh, here you go, does that mean that the power is transferred to you? You know,
apparently
I guess.
it
Like
this felt
did,
the most kids movie logic,
yeah.
I'm assuming, of the movies. Like this was like it felt like this it was super simple and super dumbed down. Um and like lacking a lot, and it felt more on the nose, and like the themes were much more in your face, like just based on what I would assume at least a good somewhat like children's animation movie would be. Like even something like Mario, which I thought was like pretty simple, I felt like Mario had more nuance than this movie did.
yeah,
Yeah.
Just to talk about before we're talking about the casting. So the first three Kung Fu Panda movies had a pretty similar production cost and then a pretty similar box office. So what do you think that was for those three movies versus Kung Fu Panda 4? Granted,
for
Kung
the
Fu Panda 4 has
budget.
only been out for 2 weeks. I guess both budget and box office. Box office, obviously, it's incomplete. Movie's only been out for 2 weeks. But for what do you think that number was and then the return was? It's basically identical for the first three.
I would have to assume like it's animation, so 100 mil each, and then box office. Uh, 600K each, just to keep it even.
I guess you mean 600 million.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know how much animated movies cost. That's a tough one. Um, I mean, voice acting, I feel like it takes a big chunk. Besides man hours, of course. I think paying for an actor to voice in a movie. Yeah, I guess $100, Drew, $1, and
100 million and $1.
yeah, yeah. It probably was like 125, 150, and
Yeah.
then
So the
made yeah.
first three all cost around 150 million, and they all returned around 600 or in the 600s. The third one dipped
Wow,
down a little bit. It was like the high 500s. This movie cost 85 million. So they cut the budget in half.
wow.
Right now it's made 180 million. Not too bad off of 2 weeks. We'll see what it finishes. But I think it seems kind of apparent based on the animation, which seemed a little lackluster. They're all pretty short movies. They're all like an hour and a half long.
I don't really remember this thing being marketed though. Um, I remember the trailer leaked online like 2 weeks before the actual trailer came out. But that's about it. And then I think I watched the trailer like once, and I haven't heard anything. I don't think I've even seen like billboards or like buzz posters for the movie.
I
So
just see a lot of trailers when I go to the movies. That's the only time I ever see stuff for it. I
Mm,
haven't like seen anything around LA, or on buses or anything like that.
yeah, same. Gosh, I'm trying to think. Maybe because I don't wind up at Universal a whole bunch, but I'm like, could the other actors, like, would that really be where the rest of that money went, or like how else did they cut back?
I'm sure they probably normally would have gotten a couple mil because like to look up who the voice actors are. I mean, it's Angelina Jolie, Lucy Liu, Jackie
Yeah,
Chan, and Seth Rogen.
and David Cross as Crane. How dare you?
Sorry.
What is it about you in like leaving off that last person?
Oh, I like David Cross too. I missed that. I forgot. I thought I said 5 names. I like David Cross. He's really funny. I love him in oh my god, just Arrested Development. Just forgot the name of the show.
I feel like Angelina would probably be the most expensive. That's just me for like just name recognition. If someone says Angelina Jolie, you're like, oh, she's in this. She's probably going to be expensive.
Yeah.
I wonder how much of the cut was her contribution, right?
Oh, true.
I'd have to imagine they were each getting at least a couple mil, especially like Rogan, Jackie Chan. Lucy Liu is still like a relatively kind of biggish deal, or at least a big name.
Yeah, and then for this to be the fourth installment, I'm pretty sure there's like a bump that would have to be attached to that
Yeah.
for all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, speaking of the marketing, I can't remember. I may have seen a poster for it at the movies versus like a trailer, because usually while trailers are going, I'm getting my popcorn. But I do remember thinking, and this happens a lot when we're this far into one particular franchise. I remember thinking, well, what else is there to say? Like, what else can Poe do? And I don't think I remember noticing the fox or chameleon or anything about like trying to like piece together what the story could have been. Um, and now that I think about it, I don't remember seeing any of the five warriors in the poster as well. But yeah, I just remember thinking like, what else is there to say in this world? And I still kind of have that question.
I don't know how they do another one unless it's just like it's another bad guy.
If they do another one, I really hope it's a lot more stylized. Um, Similar to you, Vaughn, I didn't understand why there needed to be a fourth one. Um, but in like my initial takes,
Money,
while you
money, money.
sure, sure, Universal isn't
Thank you.
one to. I mean, they are for sure. They're a corporation, But I gave it the benefit of the doubt. I thought they were gonna do something with their animation, especially it being a kung fu movie. If if again the bad guys was a very well animated movie and Puss in Boots was a very well animated movie, if you were gonna give me a 90-minute fight movie with kung fu, I would imagine you would animate it well. Um, but even in some of like the animation, there really wasn't much to take away from it. I'm sure. So Emerald City or Jade City was a great set piece. It was very grand. I would have loved to see that in like maybe an IMAX or like a bigger format just to see the scale of the city. And even in like the wide shot while he's running back to the Valley of Peace and he's like at the bottom of the frame and you see this huge mountain of like where he's at. Like if I would have seen that in like a broader format, that would have been great. But animation for like movie's sake, there really wasn't much to take away. There was like that Pokemon esque kind of like black background character with like the running lines, which was pretty cool. Um, and even in when he's painting with the Jade staff, that animation was pretty cool. But I think my favorite fight scene was the one in black and white, the one when
Yeah,
he's
that
in
that
the
was mine
fog.
too.
That
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
like the best fight scene because it was the only stylized one.
It was very. There were certain parts of it that felt. It was very Dune 2 coded.
Shut up, nerd.
But
That's
I
all I got
was
to say about the movie. But if any of y'all got
yeah.
any more points,
The last thing I'll say about it was, as we talk about messaging, right? I really did appreciate that they doubled down in this movie and we got to see more of Poe's dads, plural, which Dylan, when you go back and rewatch or go back and watch for the first time Kung Fu Panda 3,
yeah, I know
that'll
that they
have
beef. Yeah,
a little bit because like, yeah, that's my son. No, that's my son. It's like, okay, well, I raised him, but he's of me.
yeah,
I appreciated just from a progressive standpoint that they pretty straightforward say like we are both like that's our son. We are both his
yeah,
dads, and within the context or within the world of the story, we know that to be true because Poe is like the son of Li Shan, but also the son of I forget the goose's name. But I do
Mr.
appreciate
Ping.
that Mr. Ping. I appreciate that there's a kid out there who also has two dads and can watch it and that can just be a normal thing and my dads don't look like each other and maybe I only look like one of my dads or whatever the situation is but that they like that kid can also feel supported and it's not we're not being super preachy about it. It's just like Poe's got two dads and that's all right
yeah.
and those two
It,
dads are
it
going to
made
help save
sense
their
with the
son.
story.
Yeah.
With what had happened to him as a kid and everything.
I want to talk. I just want to say, Viola Davis was a surprise to me. She killed it. I know we touched on it earlier, but I want to get my praises out before we dismiss. I don't think she was in the trailers. I think the chameleon was, but not her. So I was
Yeah, I don't know.
surprised. I was shocked to see her in the movie and then just kill. Her performance was
Very
amazing.
good, very good. Good intro. Good intro to her as a character too.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That I did see coming though. I was like, yeah, he's got a discolored eye. That's going to be the chameleon.
Really?
Yeah.
I
The
figured it was
only
going to
one that has
be
an off-colored eye, like the only person at that table.
but one of them
That
was
was
it
my
was like a
thing.
it was like a cloudy eye too. So I chalked it up to him being like having a rough lifestyle or something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh.
Got cataracts.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Um
that's gonna conclude. Oh no.
well I just as we conclude I want to test this out. Jose, what would you give this film? I couldn't even say it with a straight
I wish the episode was already out because I'm having issues with the
With the
editing,
graph?
and I'm like kind of freaking out. There's audio issues, and I'm trying to figure it out. I might have to re-edit the whole thing.
What would I give it? Like a 6.5. It's not. It's not bad. It's not good. I forgot to rate it on Letterboxd
So a
actually.
D.
Yeah,
Whoa.
I
That'd be a
guess
65.
65. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, mid D plus, I suppose. Um, Definitely the weaker of one of the weaker Kung Fu Pandas, and animation for animation's sake, nothing really to write home about. Um, there are better DreamWorks animated movies out there. There are better Kung Fu Panda movies out there. There are better animated movies in general. I don't know if I said that already. Um, yeah, good, not great. 6 out of 10. 6.5.
I'm in the same boat.
And just to be super clear, Jose, was that always a 6.5, or was that a negative 6.5 that then became an absolute 6.5?
No, it was a 6.5 to begin with, for
Okay,
sure. Yeah, I don't
great.
think it was bad. While it was like a kids movie, a quote unquote kids movie, I don't think there was anything in like the, if you want to talk about cinema for cinema's sake, and bring in a an analytics eye to it. I don't think it was a bad movie. I feel like when you start getting into quote unquote bad movies is when you start teetering into the negatives. You know, like Blood and Honey is probably a quote unquote bad movie, but it's a good time. It'd probably be like a
Hmm.
-7 or something. But Kung Fu Panda is a good movie. It's made by a good studio. It's probably going to be at the lowest a 5. You know,
Yeah. And Dylan, you're in the same boat. You're saying it's
I said that,
a
yeah. Like I put it at like a D plus. I really did not.
wow.
I didn't enjoy it all that much, to be honest.
I'm going to say C- just so it can not have a talking to by the parents.
What's you gave it a B minus, Vaughn?
Solid B, a solid
Solid
B, and
B.
Solid B. Wow.
there is room, and I've written a note, in red, like see me after class, where like if you want to do a makeup exam as to like answering these questions, I'm happy to like move that up to a B plus.
Like show the work, a little bit more to see how we got to the
Absolutely,
answers. Yeah, of
yeah.
course. To
Yeah.
keep with the
Which is
math.
That's a thing that one of my math teachers actually did. Is that going to be an element of this podcast now? We can talk about some stuff from our actual teachers. Um, a thought. Something my math teacher would do is we would get a test back, and if you could correct the stuff you got wrong, like you could like resubmit your work, you could get half those points added to yours. So if I got it
Oh
like an
That's
wow.
80,
awesome.
I could do the makeup for the stuff I got wrong, and then she'd give me the extra 10 points back, so it would go up to a
That's dope.
90.
That's
That's
cool.
cool.
Shout out to Dr. Smith.
Shout out to
Shout
Dr.
out.
Smith. All right, well, I think that's going to conclude this episode. Follow us on all their socials. All that's going to be in the show notes. We're going to be next movie we're going to be reviewing is going to be Godzilla versus Kong. Very excited for that.
Yeah.
Seeing that in Dolby on Thursday. I cannot wait. Anything else either one of y'all want to shout out before we call it a day?
Yeah, I will. Despite the criticisms and the grading and everything, I want to highlight something that like Jose kind of brought up earlier, which is that like there's that theater, right, that smaller theater that is dying. I have always been a huge advocate of going to the theater to see things. If you're in a financial situation, I absolutely understand, like do what you need to do for your own money. But if possible, y'all, I know a lot of folks are fans of waiting until stuff hits streaming to like partake. If you can make it to a theater to see something, do make it to the theater. Um, Cinema and theater is an important art form. Let's support it as much as we can. And yes, I know the popcorn is overpriced, but if it helps keep the theater open, I will buy the popcorn every time. That's my how did this soapbox
I
get here?
agree.
Oops, sorry.
All I'd like to say is animation is cinema.
Yes.
Animation deserves its piece when it comes to talking about film as a whole, and we're definitely going to look into more animation. At least I hope that we get the opportunity to talk about more animation in this podcast. And maybe even bring a light to stuff that might not have necessarily, been on somebody's radar. Dylan has never seen a Kung Fu Panda movie, but now he saw this one, and it's his favorite, on the record, his favorite Kung Fu Panda movie. So,
Heard it here
animation is
first.
cinema.
Puss in Boots is
Shout
also
out
incredible.
Miyazaki.
Puss in Boots was amazing.
Puss in Boots is really good. Puss
You
in
don't
Boots
need
is
to watch
good.
any of the other Puss in Boots.
I've seen Puss in Boots. I like Shrek. I like some of the DreamWorks movies.
We're gonna offline this. We're gonna
right.
see me after class for sure.
Class dismissed.